Hey, good evening. It's Tuesday, August 30th, and thanks so much for being with me tonight. Welcome to Everyday Talk 24/7. I'm going to continue looking at Psalm 139, which is an intimate portrait of who we are before God. Maybe a little bit too intimate for us, because the truths that are here describe life and our existence as it really is. Something that our current culture wants nothing to do with. But let's continue looking at the psalm. The first two sections, the first one was about God's intimate knowledge of us. He knows everything about us, even before we have the thought. And yet, knowing all that, Jesus died on the cross, accepting the sins for those whom he chose to save, and made us right with God, and gave us peace with God. And then the second section, from verses 7 through 12, we looked at last night, God is everywhere. There's no way we can turn from him. He is there everywhere. We could run to the highest mountain, to the lowest valley, to the furthest trip into space, to the deepest trip into the ocean. God is there, holding it all together, right there with us. Whether, as I mentioned last night, we're in the MRI tube, whether we're in a desert, whether we are feeling very alone, God is present with us. He is all the same. And David is responding to these things. Now, in this next section, verses 13 through 18, it turns amazingly intimate about God's connection with you and me. That's why the thumbnail tonight has that question. Who are you? This psalm tells us in very plain language, beautiful language, but language our culture doesn't want to hear. You made all the delicate inner parts of my body, and you knit them together in my mother's womb. Hence this little child still inside his mother's womb. That's the degree that God knows you. It's not random. It's not just a set of chromosomes and things colliding together. It's all by the plan and purpose of God. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. I don't think anyone will argue that humans are not complex. But David in this psalm says, thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. As Ephesians says, we are works of art in progress. How well I know that this is true, David says. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, that is in the womb, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. And who's doing the weaving? God is, because he's the one knitting them together. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. Can you imagine this? God is that intimately involved in all of our lives. We are all image bearers of God. Some of us regenerate and know him, some of us not. But we are all image bearers. This awe applies to all humans. That's why it's such a tragic and wrong thing to take the life of another person, either living in the womb or living outside the womb. We are God's creation by God's hand. How does David respond to this? How precious are your thoughts to me, or about me, O God. They cannot be numbered. I can't even count them. They outnumber all the grains of sand, his thoughts about the wonder of God. And when I wake up, you are still with me. See, this intimate planning in verse 16 says, every moment was laid out for a single day had passed. God has got control of all these things. We are image bearers of God, created to do the things that He's called us to do. There's nobility in us as creatures. Psalm 8 says the same thing. The great tragedy when people who are lost is they can't come and grasp this wonderful identity that they have. And our culture has decided not to take the identity that God has given them. This intricate, beautiful work of God knitting us together in this mother's womb. We have chosen to reject that and tried to form our own identity. We've redefined maleness and femaleness. We have redefined what it means to be human. There are people living in our culture, our time, who don't fit very well in a nice industrial office society. Not that that's wrong, but some folks don't fit that well. But these same folks would fit in an environment where there was land and there was work to be done and there was steadfastness and there was character and faithfulness. Those things were valued. They may not have been great at figuring out numbers and working with paper, but they would be great at doing the things that sustain life. But our identity is such that we trash those folks, so we look down on them or think that they're somehow behind or disabled or learning disabled or whatever. But just because the culture doesn't fit, we don't value them. We don't value women as women. We give girls Barbie dolls and tell them this is what you've got to look like. We tell men you've got to do this or do that. You've got to be macho. You've got to be all these things. You can't be vulnerable. And then we wind up being dissatisfied with who we are instead of realizing God made us. And as we try and reject what God has made us to be, we get in trouble. When we try and form our own identity, we are denying the work of what this psalm is saying here. And what David is saying, these things are precious to me. I'm blown away with them. My identity is bound up in who God made me to be, not who I think I need to be. And that's huge. So again, give me some thoughts, give me some feedback, and if you have some questions, we can delve into this. But these are important matters for us to grasp. Our identity is described for us right here. All the really cool things about us. Whether the world thinks we're cool, whether somebody else thinks they're cool, whether we don't happen to look or think or act a certain way, we need to be able to embrace the identity that God has chosen to give us. And that's a beautiful thing. And I could talk for a long time about this, but we've only got so much time in each video. But give me some thoughts and feedback. Give me some questions. I'm sure you've got a lot of them. Rejoice in the fact of the identity that you've been given by God. That's who you are. That's who I am. Let's not try and be crazy enough to figure out our own identity. Let's let God do that, because He has. Again, thanks so much for being here. Check us out everydaytalk247.com. Send in some questions either there or on the YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, turn on post notifications. These videos will come right to you. Thank you so much for being here. Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow. Really looking forward to talking with you about this issues of identity. You have a great evening. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.